All right. Well, hi, I'm John Hart, and welcome back to Mr. America Hart. Today, I have a special guest, this man right here. I'm just going to read off a brief list, okay, before I let him speak. You guys got to hear this. Lifetime natural bodybuilder. He's coached up a ton of athletes over the years. He's 2 times Mr. British. He's Mr. Europe. He's won the world championships. He's won a pro-am show. And all of that, his career has spanned from the age of 15 all the way now to 55. And he's still in the kind of shape that we really like to see. Mr. America Hart, subscribers and viewers, you know what I'm talking about. We really like that ripped, hard, grainy look with muscle, right? So I'd like to introduce to you guys Ian Duckett. My friend Ian, welcome to the channel.
John, that was amazing. Thank you. And I'm absolutely blown away that you've asked me to come on here today. But I've been watching your channel and I love it. I really love it. I love what you're doing there. Love what you're doing. Brilliant work.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Ian. A lot of you guys watching this right now, you're going to probably figure out after a moment or two that we sort of have a mutual admiration society going on between Ian and myself. We've followed each other for years, going back to the early 2000s. We've had some similar training styles over the years as well. And Ian has a very, very interesting story. And I believe for both the very young subscribers to my channel, as well as the ones going on that are getting past 50, 55-ish and older, there is a lot to be had here, because we're going to go first a little bit into what Ian has been, where he's been. As I mentioned, he's been an accomplished natural bodybuilder and more. I'm just going to kind of touch on that in a few moments as we go. But Ian, tell us this. How old were you when you first started lifting weights, and what got you interested into bodybuilding?
Right. I started exercising at 10 years old, believe it or not. At 10 years old, I was interested in fitness even then. I used to do a lot of running, and I used to do the basic press-ups and chin-ups. And then at 13, I stumbled into a library at the time. Now, I was a bit of a tearaway at school, and actually I wasn't at school that day. And me and my friends ran into a library to play about, and something stopped me in my tracks. I think I was about 13, 14 at the time, and it was Arnold's Education of a Bodybuilder book. Now, instantly, when I picked this book up off the shelf and looked through it, it gave me goals instantly. Oh, wow, can't believe anybody can look like that. Instantly, I wanted to be a bodybuilder, because I've been interested in muscles. I've been interested in building a physique, even at a very young age, because I've been reading the Conan comics, and I've still got them to this day. The ones where, John Buscema would do the drawings, and Conan always looked amazing, and I wanted a sort of physique like that. So when I knew that people could actually look like that, i.e. seeing Arnold in that book, it made me take up weight training. So we got a chest expander and a butt worker, the usual things. And then we made, me and my friend Vince at the time, we made a little weight out of lead found on the beach, because I grew up in a seaside town. So we melted it into some paint pots and stuck a bar into them and made a 60-pound weight. And I think he's still got that to this day after all these years. But, fantastic workouts those days. And then, it just took off from there. I got into training more and more, and understanding that I wanted to be a bodybuilder became my sort of life's passion and a goal for the future.
So tell us this. So back then, I'm assuming it had to be around the Golden Era time, correct?
Oh, yes. Which I still love to this day. I still get all the magazines out, which I've had for a long, long time, and look at Arnold and Franco, Zane, all those bodybuilders. Obviously, you've been through that as well. You've seen that era, and it's just awe-inspiring. You look through those magazines and you want to tear up the gym. We took all the pages out of those magazines and stuck them on the walls of the cellar we used to train in. You know, so, you know, and I still look at them to this day to inspire me to train. I still love it just as much as I did when I was 13, 14-year-old. Still love it just as much.
Wow. Wow. So Ian, back then, I mean, it was a special time. I mean, Arnold and the boys training, and you really got into training, competing at 15, right? 15 years old?
Yes, 15. Yes, it was my first. I think I had a competition prior to that, a 14-year-old, which was like a teenage comp they did at the gym at the time. But then my first sort of major competition was actually not far from here. I grew up in Bridlington, but entered a competition which was a very famous place from here called the Batley Frontier Club, which was my first major competition. I did the under-18s, and it was EFBB. I had no idea about steroids or anything like that at that time. Not that the teenage kids were taking them them days, but I won that. There was 7 in my class, and I won it. And I thought, wow, I'm going somewhere. So that inspired me even more to work harder.
I love that. I love that. So speaking of which, you said right down the block. What part of the world are you living in? England? Is that England?
We live just outside of Leeds, which is pretty much in the centre of England. But I grew up in a seaside town, Bridlington, which is not 70 miles away from here. We go there every weekend. We go to the coast every weekend. We've got a cabin there now, which eventually we'll end up living there, Joanna and I. Once my son, decides to, fly the nest, then we'll set up and move out there.
Now, speaking of your son, I have to point out here now that you don't know this, but I'm flashing pictures across the screen right now as we go as part of your story. I'm just throwing them across the screen with a little bit of text. I want the viewer to get a great idea of the kind of conditioning that you've gotten in and been in over the years as a competitive bodybuilder. But also, you have a son. What is he? First of all, he's about 7 feet tall, right?
Well, not far off. He's 6'5.5" to be exact. Believe it or not, and I'm 5'3". Right? We have 2 kids. My late wife Louise was 6 foot. Believe it or not. So anyway, she must have liked short guys. So my late wife, who passed away, was 6 foot. So obviously the kids, they always say, there's a saying, they always say that a son will always be taller than his mother. And he is, obviously, he's a big lad. And at 21, he's getting ready for his first major competition. He did some competitions at 14, being the youngest to do them. But now he's really gained a lot of size and really come into his own. Now, I've done no pushing for this at all. I've not pushed him into this. He's seen me and his mum exercising all our lives. So it's sort of there for him anyway. So, he just took to it like a duck to water, and he's doing it absolutely 100%, just like I did back in the day. And had to mould him. He's got it. It's there, and he'll do very, very well. He's got, for a tall lad.
So let me ask you a question. Let me interrupt you for just one moment here. First of all, I know it sounds like he has your drive, which is awesome. I also know genetically. Now, I've seen a picture. I've seen not just pictures of you, but I've seen a picture of Louise. You shared one with me. Yeah, that kid has got a nice head start in bodybuilding. Okay, she had a great physique as well, right?
Yeah.
So that boy right there, you've put up some pictures of him in off-season shape, and then 6 weeks out type shape. Yes. And so one of the things that I've noticed is, you guys from the UK, okay, from the whole region over there, and all the years that I competed, and in the back of my mind, I got to tell you, when I went to the World Championships to compete, I was looking at who are the UK guys going to show up in my class, because y'all have a reputation of, when we think we're in shape, you all are just getting started.
Yeah.
And so my question is this something that Lewis has learned from you, and has just by your example?
I think Lewis has a very fast metabolism. For a tall guy, he's not got a very big bone structure. I've got a very tiny bone structure. If you look at my photos sometimes, people think I'm a lot bigger than I am. People look and they probably think, oh, it must be 5'9", 5'10", but I'm 5'3", and I weigh 140 pounds right now. And my competitive days was 143 to 147. So that is tiny, really. But Lewis has my metabolism, i.e. that he can get really, really lean very easily. Now, he wouldn't say that, but over the last, in 16 weeks, he's lost 50 pounds in 16 weeks. Yeah. You wouldn't believe 50 pounds would be on him. And he didn't look fat at that either. But 50 pounds has come off him. That's a little bit of a different thing we have, me and Lewis. I believe not to put a great deal of weight on in the off season. And I've said to him, like just recently, he's come down in weight. I said, look, I told you didn't need 20 weeks. I knew what your metabolism was like. And he's really, really tight. And for a tall guy as well, he's got very good legs. Very good legs.
Wow, wow, wow. So how old is he right now? Because I've just shot up a bunch of pictures of him on the screen.
21.
21. Wow. So speaking about being around 20, you mentioned to me in some of your notes that, and you've shared this with me over the years, that you've been making a living from bodybuilding now since you were 20 years old. Talk to me about that. How did it start? What was the, I'm giving you the show, brother. How did it start? What did that turn into? I know you've owned at least one gym, right? And then what did that turn into over the years? Just give us the cliff notes on that.
Right. So how can I put this? The very start of this, I think I've got a lot of drive to make something of myself, because when I was a youngster, when I was 15 years old, well, I'll put it this way, my son and my daughter, I am super close to, but that wasn't what it was with my father. I came from a split home, and me and my dad never got on at all. To the point at like 15 years old, I was basically booted out of the house. Now, I'm not doing this to tell you a sob story, because I wouldn't have had my upbringing any different, because it's made me what I am today. And looking back, the way that my dad was and the way that I was, he had to put up with a lot with myself. So I left home at 15 and got myself a job on the harbour front, and provided for myself from that day on. By 19, I'd saved up enough money from working various jobs, welding, milkman, worked in a warehouse, sometimes working 3 jobs, and also working at the local gym where I trained, to earn enough money to buy myself my first home. From getting my first home at 19, I turned it round and made a little bit of money on it, put that money into an account, added to it saving-wise, and we opened the gym at 25 years old. So I have like our first gym. By the time then I'd met Louise, and we opened a big gym in that days, which was 10,000 square feet at that time, which, you know, it's not uncommon now, but back in that day, in the early 90s when we opened up, it was uncommon, because I had 2 and 3 pieces of each equipment, and I added to it every year, and we was in it for probably about 16 years. So, and that's where personal training started as well. So I've been personal training since probably the early 90s also, before it even was a thing, you know. So, yeah, I'm proud of myself that I've managed to not work for anybody else for a long, long time. Let's put it that way. I've worked for myself. And these days, I'm semi-retired. You know, I said to somebody today, one of my clients, I said, look, they said, how many hours a week do you work now? I said, well, probably about 15. I said, because back in the day, I worked enough for 2 lifetimes. I was working sometimes 80 hours a week. You know what it's like when you're running and you're trying to really build your business. And so, you know, but it paid off to the point where we are now, where we're in a really, really good place. Good place, lifestyles.
Right, right. And by the way, I know that I get asked a lot about my age along the way, and I'll share with the listeners, if you don't mind your age, I'm going to share with them. I'm only a year and 3 days older than you, Ian.
Oh, wow.
So
I'm 57. How old are you?
58.
Right.
So our birthdays are only 3 days apart. So I'll give that to you later. Yeah, I'll give that to you later when we're off the air, man. So we're very close in age and very close birthdays. So we're related in more ways than one. So tell me, so as you were going, you were owning a gym, doing personal training, you were competing. I'm flashing some pictures across the screen for everybody here for their edifications, that some of the younger guys can see what's actually possible with a natural. These pictures, again, I'm going to remind you guys, Ian is 5'3". He was weighing, as he said, 147 to 150. Is that about right, Ian?
143 to 147. 143, 47.
Okay, so these pictures, in particular, there's one picture that has always caught my eye, and it's from the Worlds in 2007. This one picture where you have a hands clasped, most muscular. It's a picture of mainly your upper body, and it is out of this world nuts. It is bananas. Okay, the kind of condition you got in. I have people see that picture all the time. They go, "He's not natural." What a compliment to you.
Thank you for that.
So tell us this, Ian. In those years when you were competing, strictly, I'm talking about now, I'm going to call it sort of like your peak competitive years, right? Somewhere between about the mid 90s all the way to the early 2000s. Is that about right?
Yes.
Okay. So in that time frame, in the off season, talk to me about your off season training. I'd love to hear. I've seen also, guys, I'm going to put a link down below for this one video, and it's of our friend Ian here doing a full body. I mean, it says Judgment Day in the title of the video, but y'all are going to have to see this video because it's nonstop. He's using real weights. He's going from beginning to end, from one part of the gym to the next, to the next, to the next, lifting weights, blasting away without a break. And this is the kind of high intensity training that just, man, until you experience it, it'll put you on the floor about halfway through. But so Ian, was that sort of like your typical, I'll put a link down below for that video in particular so that any of you subscribers can see it. But when Ian, you took an off season, I know you weren't into getting fat per se, but how much would your weight fluctuate and what would your off season training look like? Let's just talk about your off season for the moment.
Right. So my off season training doesn't vary. There's not much variation between that and actually getting ready for a competition. The video you mentioned, that was a period where I was experimenting to see how big I could get. And the video you mentioned, it was a period probably in the early 2000s where I met a couple called Mick and Sue, which lived not far away. Well, they did live not far away from here because they would have been in the 50s in that time. And they put me through a high intensity workout because I'd seen one of the chaps at the gym came in and he'd made some really good gains. So I said, I've got to see these guys. So he gave me their number and off we went. Now, they put me through a workout which was unbelievable. I thought I trained hard until I met these two. And this guy had actually trained a little bit with Arthur Jones. So he wasn't making this up. He actually knew what he was doing. A very intense man. And his wife was even worse. Worse as in working me really hard. So that was like an experiment to see how much I could grow from it. And I still use those programs to this day. If somebody comes to me and says, look, I want to put on as much muscle as possible, that's the type of program I would do for them. Now, I know you're an advocate of high intensity training, and so am I. I've never really done high volume, if you know what I mean. I've discovered early that with my metabolism and my frame, that I can't do a great deal of sets and recover from it. I think I was gifted a little bit with having good balance and good shape and a good metabolism, but I'm gifted with very poor recovery. I've noticed that. I'm one of these high energy people who is always on the go and burns up calories like there's no tomorrow, which makes me.
So let me tell you, Ian, we have now another thing that we have in common now, because the way you just described it, okay, not tolerating, not being able to recover from doing any sort of a higher volume training. I've never been able to do high volume training myself. 1-2 sets max. I've tried, and it just doesn't work for me. I'm wasted. It just blows my energy. I didn't want to interrupt too much of your thought process, but go ahead, please.
It's no problem. It's great to speak to you. But I realised that that early on that I couldn't recover from a great deal of volume, which I don't. So I've always trained. Let me get back to the question of the off season. Very similar to how I was getting ready for a competition. I made great use of a power rack. I made great use of thick bars, squats, deadlifts, shoulder presses, similar to how it would be in high intensity, but maybe 2 to 3 sets per exercise. I've never done more than maybe 6 sets per body part, maybe 6 sets for chest, 6 for legs, 6 for back. And it might include 2 sets of chins, 2 sets of deadlifts, 2 sets of bent over rows. That's what I would mainly do in the off season. But the years you mentioned, let me put it this way, the years you mentioned when I was coming into my best was probably in my 40s, probably 42 onwards. And what I was doing there in the off season was doing like a mix of the Brooks Cubic type work. Have you heard of Brooks Cubic and dinosaur training? I was doing a lot of his work, i.e. from the power racks, a lot of dead stop work in the rack, you know, like benching off the pins, squatting to the pins and up, deadlifting, shoulder press off the pins, all those heavy movements, because I realized if I got stronger in a good rep range, I would get bigger. You know, and some people say to me, you know, well, it's not all about strength. Well, I'd say, well, what do you need to do then to get bigger, get weaker? It's just not happening. You have to get stronger. So the basic movements, getting stronger in them. But as time came towards the competition and I was getting leaner, I found that I couldn't recover from 6 sets. So then I dropped into a high intensity type workout where I had an A and a B routine, and I kept swapping them back and forth, and I spread out my recovery. So by the time I got to the World Championships, I was only training twice every 8 days. So I was training a day, resting 3 or 4, and then training again, depending on how I felt.
Wow. What you just described, as your energy was getting lower and you were getting leaner, which means now your recovery ability has changed. You had to pare down the volume, okay? This was something, by the way, and I'll mention him right now, that I saw with a problem with how Dorian Yates trained that may have contributed to his injuries back in the 90s, is that it seemed as if he wasn't willing to cut down even as the contests came closer. I'm just going to mention that off to the side. But mainly, Ian, as you just described, one of the things that I really admire about you is that you're not so dogmatic about only one way of doing things. You're not so dogmatic even to this day. The one thing that I see is now your career and your training career has spanned, 40 years, right? Like mine. And over those 40 years, I see how you have different cycles right now throughout your year. And we're getting to that now where you not only were competing as a bodybuilder and would have an off season, but then I noticed powerlifting was thrown in there. I noticed that as you've gone through the decades, there's been a period where you have a hiking goal, or you have a new goal that you've set to do a certain number of chin-ups. Whatever it is, you've come up with something to keep you mentally engaged. And that's something that over the years, guys that are watching this and girls that are watching this, you have to understand, you'll never make it through 20 years, 30 years, 40 years if you don't enjoy what you're doing. The entertainment value of what you're doing has got to be extremely high for you as an individual. Ian might like doing it this way. I might like doing it the way that I do it. I'm not a hiker myself, to my wife's chagrin right there. She wishes that I would be out there hiking with her a whole bunch. But other than that, you have to do what makes you happy and then be willing to adjust throughout the years for your goals, right?
Well, it's funny you mentioned that because I've wrote quite a few books, as you probably know, like yourself. Now, when I was researching for one of my last books, I had a look to see how many competitions I'd done.
Please name those books, Ian. Please tell us, what are the names? And I'll put the links down below. I'll put a picture on the screen for them. Go ahead, tell me.
Well, what I've done, believe it or not, I've done 14 books. But there's probably 6 or 7. there's 6 or 7, which are the main ones. And all it is if you type in, Ian Duckett on Amazon, you'll be able to find them there, the main ones. And they cover, I've got some up there which cover early training, and I've got some which cover training now, and some which cover high intensity training and so on, and probably getting older. But when I was researching for the last one, I thought, I'll have a look, see how many competitions I've done over the time. Because I had a chapter in the book mentioning that about goals and how can I put it? Many years of being a bodybuilder and being a powerlifter, when you come into the end of those years, as you're getting older, you struggle with your mind to find focus and a healthy obsession, let's put it that way. So because I've done 80-something bodybuilding competitions, 82, believe it or not, right, over all the years, and I've done 20 powerlifting competitions. If I don't have anything to aim for, I'm no good to anybody. I've got to have a healthy obsession. So hence, I'll direct myself to a powerlifting competition. I'll direct my energies to hiking so many miles for charity, or doing chins for charity, writing another book. I've got to have something to direct my energy to, because if I can't compete due to injuries and I can't be as good as I want to be, I've got to make the best of what I've got. And that's what I try and do.
So tell me this, Ian, the 2007 Worlds, would you call that your best ever, as far as being on stage now, I'm talking about your best ever competitive wise?
Yes, I won the Pro-Am that year. I was 42, and I also won the Pro-Am prior to that. And I guest posed at the MPA, A&B, sorry, it was then, British, which I don't think there's been many been asked to guest pose. There might have been 2 in the whole history of it. So I was very, very humbled at that and absolutely awed with that. And it was such an amazing thing to do. But I would say, look, in those years when I won the Worlds, yes, I was very, very sharp. But the European look was the look I liked the best, because that went to remind me of the olden days of bodybuilding. I wasn't quite as sharp, but I was a little bit fuller. Now, in that competition, you see, in the Worlds, I weighed 143. I think in that competition, I was like just under 150, so 149 or so, somewhere around there. A little bit bigger, a little bit fuller. And I was doing lots of squatting, deadlifting, heavy shoulder presses, quite a lot of the Brooks Cubic stuff at that point, which gave me a thickness and a look I liked the best. You know, it's hard getting ripped. No, it's not hard getting ripped. It's quite easy for me, but to hold it, it's hard to do to hold it, but it's not the look I like the best. Let's put it that way.
So let me ask you this, Ian. I've watched all of your posts over the years, and with admiration. And one of the things that jumps off this page to me, or off the computer or the phone, is your very natural diet. So please give the listener, the viewer, please give us your typical day's diet, because I know it hasn't changed much over the years, brother. I know it hasn't. I know that you like certain foods, and I know that how during that time period, your bodybuilding years first, I know off the top of your head, you'll be able to give us an idea of what your daily diet looked like then, and has it changed today? But please give us the details. Give us the details.
Now, the look I mentioned when I said to you that was my favorite look, was the European. That's the type of diet I'm eating now. When I was getting really, really tight, I did reduce the carbs somewhat. And I made liberal use of meal replacements and protein powder and amino acids at that point. Still eating well, but I was having chicken probably and turkey. But for the European, the look I like the best, I was ovo-lacto vegetarian, like my hero, Bill Pearl. So I've taken a lot from Bill Pearl as far as nutrition goes, and a lot from Clarence Bass, nutrition-wise as well. And plus, my own take on it, because I think out of all the books I've read, and I do read hundreds of books a year, I think the most I've ever read about is nutrition. And I study nutrition like you wouldn't believe. To get my my take on it and how I see things, and I see the fad diets what are around nowadays. And I think you should eat a diet which is very natural and what suits your body. Now, I eat a lot of bread, a lot of thick, dark rye bread, I eat a lot of salads, I eat eggs, I eat cheese, I drink goat's milk, nuts.
So if you had to run it down, let's say a typical day from that 99 era and then even today where you're eating a little bit more for the look that you like, morning to night, like just quickly, what would breakfast, lunch, dinner, any snacks look like?
This is very easy for me to do, because what I do is, with slight variations, I do what's called a baseline. Now, from a baseline, you can add and take away whatever you want, which makes it easy. So you basically do round dog day a day. You can round dog it day for many, many weeks until you decide you want to up in weight or down in weight, or you want to walk more, keep it for food the same, and do more activity. So it's really, really simple. So this is my favorite sort of days at the moment, what I'm eating. So it's 3 eggs on the morning I like them hard boiled. With that, I will have a good chunk of cheese, right? Before I start.
Back it up, Ian. Back it up. What kind of eggs are you eating? Are you eating just store-bought eggs? Talk to me. Come on now. Don't leave out those details.
Right. Hard-boiled eggs. Now, what I try and do is I get everything as best I possibly can, as organic and as natural as possible. So we have a farm near us, which is a chicken farm, whatever it is, but it's just for eggs. So it's an egg farm, basically. And the chickens are what would be called, where they're roam free, very free, similar to what Vince Gironda would mention, where there's roosters there with them, and they're proper good eggs, natural eggs. Now, cheese might be organic. Sometimes I'll get raw, but generally it's organic cheese. And I'll have the two biggest slices of rye bread you could ever see. So they're this thick, like half a loaf nearly, with honey on. Okay, I'll probably have a coffee with that. Mid-morning, I might have some fruit. It might be 2 bananas and an apple and a handful of nuts. Lunchtime is very similar. It is basically rye bread again. I would have nut butter on that. So it can be either peanut butter or almond butter. Along with that, I would have some yogurt, again, organic yogurt, and I'll have berries thrown in that as well, and maybe some sunflower seeds on top of that also. Mid-afternoon, again, it might be nuts and fruit, but generally I go dry fruit at this point. I'll go some nuts, cashews or almonds, again, all natural, organic, best I can, and the dates I will have then, again, all natural, all organic, nothing on them. Then it would go to sort of our evening meal. What I would do now is the biggest salad you could ever imagine. So I get a huge bowl and I put everything in this salad. Everything green, beetroot, onions, cucumber, tomatoes, everything in it. And it's a huge bowl. With that, I will have another couple of eggs and more cheese. Yeah, you're getting sick of this diet, yeah. And more cheese. And then probably about bedtime, I will have, about half an hour before I go to bed, I will have a bowl of probably muesli or granola, again, natural, organic. I will either have goat's milk on that, or I'll mix up goat's milk with a protein drink if I feel I need more protein, and put that on it, or I'll just use yogurt on top of it as well. And some berries.
Wow. That's awesome. So you were eating this way. This has been a lifestyle for you, obviously, right?
Yeah, I ate that way when I was getting ready for the European, which was, what I basically did was I did like a checklist of foods for that European show. So it might have said 4 slices of bread, might have said 6 eggs, it'll have gone 2 baked potatoes, I might have had baked potatoes then on it, it'd have how many protein drinks I would have, how many spoons of honey, on and on and on, nuts and dates, how many, and all I basically do was tick off the list every day. So I would eat it in any order I wanted to, as long as I got through that food.
So you had some built-in calorie control daily, and it sounds like it's a lacto-ovo vegetarian diet, and it's also rather high in carbohydrates, plenty of carbohydrates, yes?
Very, very, because again, like yourself, I understand that high-intensity training needs carbohydrates. If I drop my calories, like odd times, look, Joanne, my wife now, she doesn't get on very well with carbs whatsoever. So odd times I have dropped my diet a little bit to follow her, to support her when she's been getting ready for a competition. Within a week, I don't look like I even train. Just wither away to nothing. So I've got to have carbs. You know, I call my diet the sort of the carbo diet, or jokingly call it the hiker diet, because it's something I could eat anywhere. Take it with me on a hike and eat it anywhere. You don't even have to cook it to a degree, do you? There's not many foods there once you cooked. So you could take boiled eggs with you anywhere you wanted to, and it's just easy to do.
Wow, 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 wow. Listen, I want to do this. I want to have you back, okay? So this is what we're going to do. We're going to take a little bit of a break just for a moment here. I'm going to put it on pause, and we're going to get into everything from that time period on, if that's okay with you, all the way leading up to your life right now with Joe and everything you have going on, okay? So I just want to let you guys know, again, this is Ian Duckett. Man, 82 competitions, all natural, lifetime natural. We're talking about two-time Mr. British. We're talking about Mr. World. We're talking about Mr. Europe. We're talking about a Pro-Am show winner in natural bodybuilding. I mean, he's our guy. He's our go-to guy. And we're coming back for more in a little bit. So watch out for this next continuing video.